I never thought I'd be the one writing something like this. I've always been the kind of guy who rolls his eyes at ghost stories, laughs at true horror experiences on Reddit, and thinks most people are just attention-hungry liars. But after what happened to me, I don't think I'll ever laugh at the supernatural again. And the worst part is, I don't even know if what happened to me was supernatural at all. It all started after my uncle died. He was a strange man, eccentric, reclusive, and deeply superstitious. He used to tell us all sorts of weird stories growing up, about cursed graves, vengeful spirits, and people being buried alive. As a kid, I'd laugh nervously, but as an adult, I just dismissed it as the ramblings of a lonely old man. When he passed, I was surprised to learn that he had left me his house. It was an old 2-story Victorian-style building on the edge of town, a place I hadn't visited since I was 13. It was creepy back then, and time had only made it worse. Flaking paint peeled from the walls, the wooden porch groaned underfoot, and ivy choked the windows. Still, free property was free property, and I decided I'd at least check it out before deciding whether to sell. I arrived on a cold Friday afternoon with a backpack and a flashlight. The key my uncle's lawyer gave me barely worked in the rusted lock, and when I pushed the heavy door open, a musty, stale odor hit me. The house hadn't been touched in months, maybe years. It felt wrong from the moment I stepped inside. There was a heaviness to the air, like the house itself was holding its breath. I walked through the narrow hallway, my footsteps echoing off the cracked plaster walls. Faded family portraits watched me from every corner, people I didn't even recognize. I was halfway through exploring the upstairs when I found it, a door at the end of the hall that I'd never noticed before. It was slightly narrower than the others, with a brass knob that was cold to the touch. When I turned it, the hinges screamed in protest, revealing a steep staircase spiraling down into darkness, a hidden basement. The air that wafted up from below was colder, damper, and it smelled wrong, like wet soil and something metallic underneath. I considered turning back, telling myself I could explore it later with better lighting, but curiosity tugged at me. I took a breath and descended. The staircase creaked with each step. The basement was small, smaller than I expected. Stone walls lined with wooden shelves, most of them empty except for jars filled with cloudy liquid. In the center of the room was a large rectangular box resting on 2 sawhorses. My heart thudded when I realized what it was. A coffin. It was old but not ancient, polished oak with brass handles, the kind you'd see at a funeral. But there was no nameplate, no sign it had ever been buried. It was just here. I stared at it for a long time, telling myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe my uncle was paranoid about death and bought it early. Maybe it was some weird collection piece. But then I noticed the faint scratches on the inside of the lid, long, desperate claw marks that gouged the wood. I stepped back, suddenly dizzy. That's when I heard it. Knock. It was faint but unmistakable. 3 slow, deliberate taps from inside the coffin. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. For a moment, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me, that maybe the old house was just settling. But then it came again. Knock, knock, knock. I bolted. I don't even remember climbing the stairs, just the blind animal panic pushing my legs until I was upstairs again, slamming the basement door shut behind me. I stood there in the hallway, heart pounding, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it, but I hadn't. I should have left right then. Any sane person would have. But something in me, maybe fear, maybe obsession, needed to know more. I spent the rest of the evening combing through my uncle's old study, looking for any clue as to why there was a coffin in his basement. I found it in a locked drawer, a thin leather journal, brittle with age. Most of the entries were mundane, grocery lists, bills, daily notes, until I reached the last few pages. The dreams are getting worse. I hear them knocking again. Sometimes they call my name. I should have never taken it from the grave. It doesn't belong here. If anyone finds this, don't open it. I barely slept that night. Every sound in that house and every creak, every gust of wind made my skin crawl. But what truly kept me awake was the sound I swore I heard just before dawn. 3 soft knocks from somewhere below. The next morning I told myself I'd imagined it all. Maybe there was an animal trapped down there. Maybe the old pipes were making noise. I just needed closure. So I went back down. The basement was colder than before, almost unnaturally so. The coffin still sat in the center of the room, but now, the lid was slightly ajar. I know I hadn't touched it, I know it was sealed shut the night before. My hands shook as I approached. The smell was stronger now, damp earth and something foul like rotting meat. I reached out and slowly lifted the lid, empty. I stared into the hollow box, my heart pounding. It was empty, no body, no bones, nothing. But the scratches were deeper than I remembered, and there was something else now, a smear of what looked like fresh dirt on the bottom. Then I heard breathing. It was faint, wet and ragged, coming from behind me. I spun around, flashlight jerking across the basement. Nothing, just stone walls and empty shelves. But the breathing continued, closer now, as if someone was standing inches from my ear. I bolted up the stairs again, slammed the basement door, and this time, I dragged a heavy dresser in front of it. I told myself I was done, I'd pack my bags and leave. But I never made it to the door, because the knocking started again. This time it wasn't from the basement. It was coming from the inside of the walls. The next few days were a blur. I tried leaving the house more than once, but every time I did, something stopped me. The front door wouldn't open no matter how hard I pulled. The windows were stuck, sealed shut. My phone wouldn't get a signal, and the knocking. It followed me everywhere. It started slow, rhythmic, knock, 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 and always in groups of 3. Sometimes it came from beneath the floorboards. Sometimes from inside the closet, once even from under my bed. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. The house was alive, pulsing with something I couldn't understand. And worse, I started to hear voices. At first they were whispers, unintelligible murmurs that slithered through the walls. But soon they became words. My name over and over, Eli. Eli, open it. I thought I was losing my mind. Maybe I was. But then I found something in the journal I'd missed. A page torn halfway out, written in frantic, scrawling handwriting. The one beneath the coffin is not dead. It was never dead. It only sleeps when ignored. The knocking means it's awake. Do not listen. Do not answer. I tore that page out and carried it in my pocket like a talisman, but it didn't help. The knocking grew louder, more insistent, and then one night it stopped. That should have been a relief. It wasn't, because silence meant it was closer. The final night is the part I struggle to talk about. Even now, writing this, my hands are shaking. I was lying in bed, exhausted but too afraid to sleep, when I heard it, the soft creak of the basement door opening. I knew I'd blocked it with a dresser. I knew it should have been impossible. But the footsteps climbing the stairs told me it wasn't. Slow, heavy, wet. They stopped outside my bedroom. I held my breath, staring at the door, praying I was dreaming. And then came the knock, 3 times. Right against the wood. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. But the doorknob began to turn. When the door finally opened, there was nothing there, just the empty hallway bathed in moonlight. But the floor was wet, soaked in muddy footprints that led from the basement to my room. And then I felt a breath against my neck. I don't remember much after that. I must have blacked out. When I woke up, it was morning, and I was in a hospital bed. They told me I'd been found unconscious in the middle of the road, barefoot and covered in dirt. The police said the house was empty when they checked it. No coffin, no journal, nothing. It was as if it had all been erased. I moved out of town the next day. I haven't gone back, but the nightmares haven't stopped. And sometimes late at night, when the house is still and the world is quiet, I hear it again. Knock. Knock, knock. I don't know what was in that coffin. I don't know if it was ever really empty. But I do know one thing, whatever it was, it's not done with me. I don't know how to begin this without sounding insane, but I swear every word I'm about to write is the truth. People will probably think I made this up, that it's some twisted horror story for attention. I used to think the same way when I read stories like this online. But then it happened to me, and now I can't sleep without hearing it. That slow, deliberate knock, knock, knock from somewhere I shouldn't be able to hear it. I'm a funeral director, or I was. After what happened, I don't think I'll ever set foot in a funeral home again. My family has been in the business for 3 generations. We own a small mortuary in the outskirts of town, Holloway & Sons Funeral Home. My father ran it until he died, and then it was my turn. I knew every part of that place. The embalming room, the chapel, the casket storage, even the cold room where the bodies waited for burial. Death never bothered me. It was a part of life. And in my line of work, you learn to treat it with respect. But there's a difference between death and whatever this is. It started 2 months ago with a woman named Clara Whitmore. She was 72, a retired school teacher who died peacefully in her sleep. Nothing unusual. I met her daughter Evelyn and we arranged the service for the following Friday. Everything was routine. The paperwork, the embalming, the casket selection. Evelyn requested a closed casket funeral. She'd want it that way, she said. That was fine. Closed caskets were common. The night before the service, I stayed late to finalize things. I do that often. It's quieter at night and I like having the building to myself. Around midnight, I went down to the preparation room to double-check Clara's presentation. She was lying in her coffin, hands folded, makeup done, dressed in a pale blue gown. Everything looked perfect. I was turning to leave when I heard it. Knock, I froze. It was faint but unmistakable, a single soft tap from inside the coffin. I laughed nervously to myself. Old wood sometimes creaks. Air pockets shift. I've heard caskets make noises before but never like this. I walked back to the coffin and placed my hand on the lid. It was still. Then it happened again. Knock, 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 3 times, deliberate. Like someone inside was knocking. I stumbled back. My heart was hammering so loud I could hear it in my ears. No, I whispered aloud. That's impossible. Clara was dead. I'd embalmed her myself. I'd stitched her eyelids shut. I'd sealed her jaw. There was no way. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a pipe behind the wall, maybe my exhausted mind playing tricks. But then the knocking came again, louder this time. Knock, knock, knock. And then I heard it. The faintest sound of scratching against the wood. I bolted out of the prep room, slammed the door behind me, and didn't stop until I was upstairs in the office, trembling. I spent the rest of the night in my chair, lights on, watching the clock crawl toward dawn. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? A funeral director hearing knocking from a corpse? They'd think I'd lost my mind. The next morning, the service went on as planned. I kept my distance from the casket, but nothing unusual happened. Evelyn and her family said their goodbyes. Clara was buried that afternoon. I convinced myself it was nothing, just stress, just my imagination. But the knocking didn't stop. 2 weeks later, we received another body. Male, early 40s, died in a car accident. His name was Peter Gray. I was prepping him one night, humming quietly to myself when I heard it again. Faint, rhythmic knocking from one of the storage caskets in the corner. I told myself I was imagining it. I ignored it. But then the lights flickered. Once. Twice. And in the silence between, I heard it. The same 3 knocks, slow and deliberate. I walked to the casket, heart pounding. It was empty. Completely empty. I lifted the lid just to be sure. And as I did, I felt it, a vibration against the wood, like someone had just pulled their hand away. I left early that night. From that point on, it became a pattern. Every time a new body arrived, the knocking returned. Sometimes it came from inside the casket, before the body was even placed inside. Sometimes it came from the embalming table. Once, I swear, I heard it coming from under the floor of the viewing room while a service was in progress. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. I stopped telling myself I was imagining it, because one night I heard something worse. It was past midnight again. I was alone in the funeral home filling out paperwork when I heard the knocking. This time it was upstairs, 3 floors above me in the coffin display room. I grabbed my flashlight and climbed the stairs, every creak of the building making my skin crawl. The display room was empty, silent. Rows of caskets lined the walls. Mahogany, oak, cherry. All pristine, all closed. I stood there listening. Knock, knock, knock. It was coming from one of the caskets in the back. A sealed display unit. No one had touched it in months. I approached it slowly. The knocking continued, louder now. My breath caught in my throat. Hello? I whispered, feeling like an idiot. The knocking stopped, and then from inside the casket I heard a voice. Let me out. It was barely audible, hoarse, weak, and full of panic. But I heard it. I know I did. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the flashlight. My legs felt like they were going to give out. I ran from the room, down the stairs, and out into the cold night air. I didn't stop running until I was home. I tried to stay away after that. I even considered quitting. But Evelyn, Clara's daughter, called me 2 days later. She sounded distraught. Something's wrong, she said, with my mother's grave. My blood turned to ice. She explained that the groundskeeper had reported strange noises coming from her mother's plot. At first, they thought it was animals. Then they realized it was knocking. I went with her to the cemetery. The soil above Clara's grave was undisturbed. The headstone was intact. Everything looked normal. But when we stood in silence, we heard it. Knock, 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 faint, muffled, coming from beneath 6 feet of earth. Evelyn screamed. I couldn't move. They exhumed the coffin the next day, and when they opened it, Clara was still inside, still embalmed, still dead, but her hands were no longer folded on her chest. They were pressed flat against the inside of the lid, and her nails were torn and broken. After that, I stopped trying to explain anything. The knocking became part of my life. I heard it everywhere, at work, at home, sometimes even in my sleep. It followed me like a curse, and then came the night I'll never forget. It was raining hard. I was alone again. I'd stopped scheduling night shifts for anyone else. The power had gone out and the funeral home was plunged into darkness. I was sitting in my office with a candle when I heard the knocking. But this time it was different. It was louder, closer, not coming from a coffin or a wall or a floor. It was coming from inside my office. Knock, knock, knock. I turned slowly toward the sound. It was coming from the filing cabinet against the far wall. The metal drawers rattled slightly with each knock. I stood up, my legs trembling, and approached. The knocking grew faster, more frantic. I gripped the handle of the top drawer and yanked it open, empty. The knocking stopped, and then I heard it behind me. A slow creak, like wood shifting. I turned toward the doorway. A coffin was standing upright in the corner of the room. I swear on my life it hadn't been there seconds ago. It was closed, sealed shut, but I recognized it. The same polished oak as Clara's. The same brass handles. The knocking started again, louder than ever. The coffin rattled with each impact, and then from inside a voice screamed, "Let me out!" I ran. I don't even remember leaving the building. I don't remember unlocking my car. I just remember driving through the storm, shaking, screaming, crying. I didn't go back the next day, or the day after. I handed in my resignation a week later. It's been 3 months. I moved to another city, started a different job. I thought I'd escaped, but last night I woke up at 3:12 a.m. My apartment was silent. My heart was finally starting to slow when I heard it, faint, deliberate, coming from the inside of my closet. Knock. Knock, knock. I don't know what's in there. I don't know if it's Clara or Peter or something else entirely. But I know one thing, you can bury the dead. You can lock them away. But if they still have something to say, they'll find a way to knock. They say the dead can't hurt you. That once someone is gone, they're gone, and that it's the living you should fear. I used to believe that. But I know now that death is just a door, and sometimes something knocks from the other side. My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 34, and until a few months ago, my life was painfully ordinary. I had a decent job as a paramedic, a small apartment in the city, and a girlfriend who'd recently moved in. My life was predictable. Night shifts, overtime, cheap takeout, Netflix on the couch. Nothing exciting. Nothing noteworthy. All of that changed after we answered the call on Hollow Creek Road. It was raining that night. One of those bone-soaking, relentless storms that turns the city into a blur of lights and reflections. The dispatch was routine. Possible DOA, abandoned property, unknown circumstances. I've seen dead bodies before. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Car crashes, overdoses, suicides. You get used to it. Or you think you do. But I wasn't prepared for him. The house on Hollow Creek was a 2-story farmhouse, long abandoned, its windows boarded and roof sagging. The cops were already there when we arrived, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Neighbor reported a foul smell, one of them said. We found this in the basement. This was a man, or what was left of him. He was lying inside a coffin of all things, half buried in the basement floor. It looked hand-built, crude but sturdy. There was no lid. The man's body was twisted unnaturally, his face frozen in a rictus of pure terror. His fingers were shredded down to bone, as if he'd been clawing at the wood. I remember thinking, he was alive when they put him in here. The coroner took the body. The cops combed the property. I should have gone home and forgotten all about it. But I didn't. Because just before they closed the coffin to take him away, I heard something. 3 faint knocks down from inside the box. I told myself it was my imagination. Rain hitting the roof, footsteps upstairs, anything but what it sounded like. But the sound lodged itself in my head like a splinter. It followed me back to the ambulance, followed me home, followed me into my dreams. That's when the nightmares started. In them, I was the one in the coffin, trapped, buried alive. My fist pounded against the wood until they bled, but no one came. And always, just before I woke up, there would be a knock from somewhere above me. Slow, deliberate, answering my screams. Knock. Knock, knock. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. I told myself it was trauma, that seeing that man had just gotten under my skin. But then 2 weeks later, the real horror began. It started with the noises. Late at night, lying awake in the dark, I'd hear it. A soft, rhythmic tapping from the walls. Always in groups of 3. Always just as I was about to drift off. Knock, knock, knock. Sometimes it came from the closet. Sometimes from under the bed. Once it came from inside the bathroom mirror. 3 gentle raps against the glass as I brushed my teeth. I told my girlfriend, Jenna. She said it was pipes or old wood settling. I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't explain why the knocking always stopped the second she entered the room, or why once it spelled out my name. Things escalated from there. The dreams grew worse, longer, more vivid. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, convinced I was suffocating. I'd claw at the sheets, gasping for air, my nails tearing into the mattress. I started hearing voices. 2. Whispers just at the edge of hearing, calling my name, telling me to listen. And then came the night that changed everything. I was on shift, driving back from a call when the radio crackled. Another DOA, another abandoned property, and another coffin. My blood ran cold. The house was barely a mile from the first one. Same setup. Boarded windows, rotting floorboards, basement full of dirt and decay. And in the center, another coffin. Same wood, same nails, same horror. But this one wasn't empty. The man inside was still alive. Barely. His breathing was shallow, his eyes rolled back. His fingernails were shattered, his knuckles raw and bleeding. He'd clawed himself bloody trying to escape. And etched into the inside of the coffin lid in jagged, frantic letters was a single word. Listen. We got him to the hospital, but he didn't make it. Massive cardiac arrest. The doctors said he'd been buried alive for at least 24 hours. There was no reason he should have lasted that long. That night I heard the knocking again. But this time it wasn't from the walls. It was from under my bed. Jenna left a week later. I don't blame her. I'd become a wreck, paranoid, sleepless, jumping at every sound. The knocking was constant now, echoing through the apartment at all hours. I tore the walls open looking for pipes. Nothing. I tore up the floorboards. Nothing. And then I found it. There, beneath the floor of my bedroom, buried in the concrete foundation, was a small wooden box. It wasn't much bigger than a shoebox, sealed tight with rusty nails. My hands shook as I pried it open. Inside were fingernails. Dozens of them. Some old and yellowed, others fresh and bloody. And beneath them a piece of parchment, brittle and dark with age. Scrawled on it, in a language I didn't recognize, were symbols that burned in my mind long after I closed the lid. That was the night the knocking spoke. It started with the usual 3 knocks, then silence, then 4, then 2, then 5. I stared at the wall, heart hammering as I realized it wasn't random. It was Morse code. I scrambled for my phone, typing it out as fast as I could. The translation was simple. Just 3 words, let me out. I moved out the next day. New apartment. New city, new life. But it didn't help. The knocking followed me in hotel rooms, in my car. Once, even in a public restroom. 3 knocks from the inside of a locked stall. No one there when I opened it. And then came the final descent. The night I woke up in darkness. I don't mean darkness like the lights were off. I mean absolute darkness, suffocating, heavy. My chest was tight. My arms were pinned. I tried to move and felt rough wood beneath my fingers. My breath hitched. No, I was lying in a coffin. Panic exploded inside me. I screamed until my throat bled. I kicked and punched and clawed, but the wood didn't budge. My lungs burned. My vision swam. Somewhere above me I heard dirt shifting, and then a knock, 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 knock. It was coming from outside, answering me, mocking me. I must have passed out because when I opened my eyes, I was back in my bed. The sun was rising. Everything looked normal. But the dirt under my fingernails and the blood on my hands told me it wasn't a dream. I'm writing this now from a motel room 2 states away. I don't know how much longer I can keep running. The knocking is louder now, closer. Sometimes it comes from inside my chest, like my own heartbeat has turned against me. I don't know what it wants. Maybe it wants me to dig. Maybe it wants me to open something. Or maybe it's just waiting for the day I'm too tired to run. Because last night as I lay awake in the dark, I heard something I've never heard before. Not 3 knocks. Not 4. Just one right against the back of my skull. Knock. And a whisper. So close it felt like it was inside my head. Your turn. I can't stop thinking about that first man we found. The one buried in the basement with his fingers torn to bone. I used to wonder what he saw before he died. What he heard. Now I think I know. And if you're reading this, if you ever hear it too, that slow, deliberate rhythm from somewhere it shouldn't be, don't listen. Don't knock back, because once you do, you'll never stop hearing it, and eventually, it'll hear you too.